All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, the title of this session, "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," refers to things that have happened to me throughout my career. Yeah, it in any career, it's never plain sailing. Uh, I mean, I'll start off with a bit of my background. I went to university and I did um, metallurgy and material science. So I was going to discover a great new alloy that was going to change the world forever. And when I came out, all of the special steels, alloy companies, a lot of the material scientists companies were struggling or had gone bust. And I went to university in Sheffield. Sheffield used to be known as Steel City. And overnight, it became an industrial wasteland as steel firm after steel firm after steel firm closed down. So that there were no jobs to be had. And even the ones that there were, uh, I didn't have enough experience. And I would be told this time and time again. Every time I went for an interview, it would be, well, you don't have enough experience. And I'd say, well, how do I get that experience? They'd say, well, get a job. And I'd say, well, you just told me I can't get a job because I don't have the experience. And he went, yes, it's a problem, isn't it? Which was less than helpful. So I retrained, and I retrained in electronics and microprocessor technology. And I embarked on a career in IT. Um, I started off working for a company called ICL, and ICL was a fun company to work for. Uh, they were based just outside London, and I did lots of traveling. And at the time, traffic in London wasn't too bad, so you could actually drive in. And I would do, I would fix things, but I would also talk to the client about what particular problems they were having, what were the difficulties they faced, because I loved talking to people. And I guess that's what really got me interested in going down a more consultative route rather than being in pure IT. I mean, IT was great fun. I remember once I had to install a system. Yeah, uh, this was going to be a mini system. Mini system. It was about, it would come up to just below my chest, and it was about what, a meter wide, and it was being installed in a building. But it arrived on a truck. The building was being built. The staircase that we had to get the system up was on the outside wall of a building because they hadn't built the other wall yet. So we had to carry this system, four of us, up a set of stairs with nothing on one side into a building where the ceiling was polythene in places. There were people with drills and hammers and everything, and I had to walk. It had to be walked into the one room where everything was finished off and then installed. And I asked the program manager, why is it being installed now when the building isn't ready? And he took me over to his system, and he pulled all his papers out of his file, and he said, well, here's the project plan. And this day is when the system's supposed to be installed. I said, yeah, but there's a dependency on that that says the building's finished. The building isn't finished, so maybe you should have delayed that bit. And he went, no, 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 if it's on the plan, it has to be done. And the reason I mention that is because as I moved through my consulting career, I found an awful lot of people would, the plan was the Bible. The plan was their reference book, their encyclopedia. You know, it had to be done according to the plan, and everything had to make sure that that happened. And it's not always so. You have to flex, you have to move things around. So talking to people got me interested in consulting. And I moved from what was essentially a retail job, moving into a high performance compute industry, where I had to go through security vetting. The first day that I walked into the office of my new job, which was with Computer Science Corporation, it was based in Farnborough in the UK. I had to get security clearance. I couldn't start until I was security cleared. First day I walked in, nobody spoke to me. They were all sitting there at their keyboards, typing away on their keyboards, looking at their screen. And I walked down the entire length of the office. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said morning. Nobody said anything. I walked into the boss's office to find out the boss was on holiday. So I met one of the other managers, and he said, "Oh, I forgot you were coming today. Oh, well, let's see what we can do." So I thought, well, this is a really auspicious start. So I didn't have a laptop. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So they said, "We need to get you involved in this project we've got, but there's a problem." And I went, "Okay, what's the problem?" Well, the problem is that we're installing these high performance compute systems, and each of the high performance compute systems was about between £3 and £5 million worth of hardware, and they needed a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, to keep them running in the event that the power failed and they had to be closed down. Whenever they tried to commission the UPS, it blew parts of the supercomputer. They already had a bill for, I think it was about £900,000 for damage that had been done to the supercomputer. My job was to speak to the two parties that were involved and find a way to get the UPS commissioned before my boss came back, which was 2 weeks. So this was my first consulting role. I had to talk to both parties, find out what was acceptable, what wasn't acceptable, what needed to be done, what couldn't be done. And I spoke to the managing director of Silicon Graphics UK, and he said, "I'm not having that thing switched on near my system because it doesn't work. It's a piece of crap. Get it out, get a decent system in." I said, "Okay, I accept that you are entitled to an extreme view, but..." So we had a chat, and I said, "What would be acceptable to you?" He said, "Acceptable to me would be written proof that the UPS works as per the specification and it's not likely to damage any of my equipment." Fine. So I went away and I had a meeting with the MD in the UK of Merlin Geran, who were providing the uninterruptible power supply. And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "That bloody supercomputer keeps messing with my UPS and blowing my UPS up." Okay, so we got both parties blaming each other for the problem. So I sat down and I talked to him, and I'd done some research on the internet, and I discovered that there are dummy loads that you can apply. So I could rent a load device that would simulate the characteristics of the high performance compute. We could put that directly onto the UPS, turn the UPS on, simulate all of the right conditions, and see what happened. And it would give me a written printout of all the characteristics. Yeah. So I got agreement that we could do that. We did that. We got the printout from it. I put a written document around that was agreed by all of the engineers, yeah, within the two parties. And I sent it to both MDs. And reluctantly, they both agreed that we'd done everything possible to minimize the damage. We got the UPS commissioned 2 days before my boss came back. When my boss came back, I got called into the office. And I thought, oh, here we go. I'm the new boy. I'm going to get told off for something. And he said he'd had a phone call from the MD at Silicon Graphics, and he said that he was very impressed with the way I'd handled the situation, the actions I'd taken, and he was looking forward to working with me more in the future. Victory! So that was the first one. That went really well. There have been others that have been less auspicious. I mean, I worked with a number of Indian consulting companies, and the work ethos is different. I accepted that you had to do extended hours. You had to maybe work harder than you might in a normal 9-to-5 job. But Indian companies sometimes had a different ethos. It's changed a lot since then, but all I can do is recount my experience. And I worked with one, and I went into the office on Monday morning, and I was the first one in the office. And the kitchen was full of pizza boxes. Why is the kitchen full of pizza boxes? It turns out that there were some people that had been brought over from India to do an assignment, and they were working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And the pizzas were what they'd bought for themselves to eat in the office while they were still working. And I raised a concern around this because normally your company insurance only covers you for business hours, does not cover you at the weekend. So if you're working at the weekend, you have to get special permission, because normally your liability insurance is much reduced at the weekend. So you can have a couple of people in, but you can't have a full team in. And I raised this with one of the vice presidents in the UK, and I got shouted at. I have never been spoken to like that in my life. I got told, why was I interfering? I didn't know anything about this. It wasn't part of my job. Why are you just go away and do your job. If you can do your job well, then you'll be fine. If not, then we'll be watching you. And I thought, okay, that's maybe not the the best way to start a relationship, but you know, different people work in different ways. Different companies work in different ways. A lot of the big companies that I've worked with, they've been highly proceduralized. It's all been about procedure, And if it falls outside that procedure, then it's difficult to get things done. I've always been a little bit unorthodox in the way that I do things, because I like to get the job done. If it means I have to work at the edge of the rules, then I'll do so. Provided I'm not breaking the rules and I'm doing anything that I shouldn't do, then I will push that framework to the limits. When I was working at CSC, we had a bunch of consulting engineers who used to go out and meet the clients, look at their problems, work out a solution for the client, and they didn't have a laptop that they could take with them. They had a desktop in the office, but no laptop. They used to have to take a notepad out, write notes down, bring it back, type it all up. So I thought, would it be useful if they all had laptops? And I had access to the company procurement portal. And I looked, and the recommended company laptop was a Hewlett-Packard laptop at the time, and it was about that thick, and it was like that. It was a brick, and they were £2,700 each, and I had 8 people that wanted them. So I thought, well, I need to do this a different way. How can I find a different way to do this? And one of the engineers said, we'd like to dual purpose the laptops and not just use it for writing proposals, but we'd like it to be able to use as a support tool, because when we're working outside of office hours, and we're supporting some of the systems that we have to, we could use it for that. I discovered on the procurement portal that we could buy Toshiba Tecra laptops for £900. Now, the reason I say this is because there was a capital request level, which was £1,000. Anything above that, you had to write out special paperwork and it had to be approved by a vice president. £900 fell below the limit. I raised 8 purchase orders for 8 Toshiba Tecra laptops at £900 each. And I ordered them, I maybe ordered 2 one day, 2 another day. So I staggered them. Everybody got their laptops. Everybody was happy. Everybody could go out on their assignments, do what they needed to do. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the head of procurement. He said, I understand you've purchased a number of laptops. I said, yes. He said, they don't meet the company standard. I said, no, but they meet the standard required for the people to be able to do their job within this department. These are departmental specific laptops and will never be used within the general pool of CSC. They will be used only for this specific purpose. He said, good answer. He said, however, please can you try not to do this again, because you've now set a precedent, yeah, and people know what you've done, and people are going to try and do the same thing. And I don't want to have a flood of unauthorized bits and pieces coming into the company. So I admire your ingenuity, but please, can you check with me first? That's fair enough. But my consultants were happy. Funny, I can tell you some funny stories. I worked in for GSK, and we were doing an engagement where we were looking at their supply chain and the data that they used within their supply chain. They'd been trying to implement SAP for 20 years without success. So we looked at it in a different way, and we decided that we would get their data, or get them to recognize that their data was the problem, not SAP. They had a very, very poor concept of master data. To them, master data was information that might sit on a personal server I have underneath my desk. It might be on a spreadsheet on my desktop. It might be written down on pieces of yellow sticky notes that I've got around the lab. So data control was very, very poor. So we did a piece and we made recommendations about it. And I wrote reports about data, and I wrote one about how data should be used specifically from top to bottom within a company, in particular a pharmaceutical. And then I got sent down to one of their manufacturing plants in Worthing on the south coast of England. Now, in their manufacturing plants, they make different kinds of base chemicals or base compounds for medicines. And one of the compounds they made was penicillin, base penicillin. Base penicillin is pure white. Yeah, it looks remarkably like another substance that people in Colombia sell for quite a lot of dollars if they can get it into the US. Yeah, I think that's a similar white powder. But you have to be aware of the fact that penicillin has side effects. In large doses, it has side effects. So you had to wear protective clothing. The protective clothing is blue. Now, working in a chemical installation, you might think, why blue? Because normally, if you're working in a laboratory environment, you wear a white coat or white overalls. However, penicillin's a white powder. White powder on a white background doesn't show up. So you have to wear blue overalls. You have to wear blue gloves, and you have to wear blue head nets. Yeah. And if you've got a beard, you have to wear a beard guard as well, a blue beard guard. So it was like working with characters out of a Roald Dahl book. Yeah. The Munchkins were blue in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So I was working with what felt like the cast of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, only we were producing penicillin. You have to go on a course, an awareness course of what penicillin can do. And there were people that worked in the office, and you looked at their hands, and their hands were all cracked and dry. And working with penicillin for a long time can give you contact dermatitis. It's an illness of the skin, which causes it to dry out, crack, weep, becomes very painful. So there were people that I worked with that had this, and they said it's nasty stuff, but it cures people. So the base chemical is not always great. It was an interesting site. There were lots of characters there. They used to try and work in an agile way, and they used to have their morning production meetings. And I got invited to one. And it's not a sit-down meeting in a room. Yeah, you have an area in one of the offices where they pull some screens up and they pin the charts up, and everybody stands up, so that A, you can maintain your attention. B, the meeting won't last too long because people get uncomfortable standing up for too long. And 3, it's much more visual. Sitting down, you can look at your laptop on your desk, you can take emails. Standing up, it's much harder. So it gives people that focus to look at what's happening. So that was something I learned, and I've tried to apply that in other engagements as I've gone along. I worked for an engagement that we did when the UK Olympics, when the UK was going to do the Olympics in London, in the Olympic Park. We had an engagement with part of the construction team. We were putting a new IT help desk in for them. And I was looking at the processes that were going to be run. I was looking at engaging with the team, training the team, so that they were going to be fully conversant with how to use this thing. And every now and then you would get people that would come into the office. And have you all heard of a guy called Sebastian Coe? Yeah, a UK athlete. He used to do the 800 and the 1500. He was part of the management board of the overall team that were running the entire Olympic implementation. And he came into the office one day, and my first thought was, he looks taller on television, because he's not a very big guy. We had some interesting discussions about how things were going to go, and the biggest thing I've learned is talking to people. You get far more information through talking to people than any other way. People can write things down for you, but once they've done that, if you talk to them about what they've written down, you'll find that you'll get much more information about it. One thing about that piece, I have a personal phobia about heights. Okay, the building that the Olympic Delivery Authority had rented was the Barclays Tower near Canary Wharf in London, and we had floors 34 to 36. The building has glass sides, so in the office it's floor to ceiling glass. So I had a desk that was approximately 6 feet from the windows, And you would get people that would walk past my desk, lean against the window and look out and go, the view's wonderful. And I'm sitting at my desk going, no, no. Then my worst fear was realized one day when the fire alarm went off. Now, in a tall building, you don't all rush for the exit and go down the stairs in a very big building. It's a phased evacuation. So this very friendly voice comes over and says, a fire has been reported on floor whatever. Please stay where you are. There's no cause for alarm. We will keep you updated as we know any further information. However, be aware that if required, there is a safe room at the top of the stairwell, yeah, where you can go in case of dire circumstances. It's basically like a big concrete oven that they build in the stairwell where you can go and hide. And it's supposed to be fireproof. Never trust builders. So we waited and we waited and we waited. Fire engines came, and we were finally given the go-ahead to leave the building. So we had to walk down 34 flights of stairs, and you can only move at the pace of the slowest person. And it takes what seems like forever to get out of the building. But it does give you a chance to reassess your values of life on the way down. But you'd be amazed at the environments that you have to work in. Being a consultant is not always glamorous. I mean, one of my last engagements was with a food manufacturer, Nestle, in Holland, and they had a manufacturing plant, and I had to go down when we were implementing the new SAP system. I had to go down, so I was all kitted out in my safety gear, yeah, steel-toed boots, coveralls, gloves, hairnet, and you go down onto the floor, and you can only walk in the areas that are marked as safe zones. So everything is marked off with lines, yellow lines. You must stay behind the yellow line. So even though you're a consultant, you sometimes have to go down into the working environment. And they've got all the production lines, yeah, and the forklift trucks whizzing around, taking pallets of stuff around. The implementation went fine, the training went fine, and I got some freebies. I got some things called sprinkles. They're weird. The Dutch have toast, and they put these sugar sprinklings on the toast, and they have it for breakfast, which I found extremely odd. But they then challenged me about haggis, which they said was equally odd. So I said, different people across the world like different things. So you meet different people, you meet different cultures, you get to do different things. You get to do things that are really quite exciting. I mean, the thing I did with the UPS, I found that really exciting because it was a challenge. The thing with Nestle over in Holland, I found less of a challenge because there wasn't really much for me to do. I couldn't change anything. It was all going according to a set process. But that's the nature of being a consultant, because a lot of companies will measure a consultant's utilization. You will have a utilization target, yeah, because on the back of that is a revenue target, yeah. So the company generates revenue from the hours that the consultant works. So if you're not working, you're not generating revenue, you're a cost. So you sit in a different line on the profit and loss, yeah. So sometimes you will take something that is not your first skill or is not what you want to do. I'll give you an example. I had to do a piece of work for Barclaycard. Barclaycard were implementing huge system that was going to do all of their credit card transactions, issuing of credit cards, all the credit card checks, everything like that. It was going to be this wonderful system. And I was going to go in as program manager for a specific piece. However, when I got there, I found that I was project planner. So I was just developing the project plan. And different people wanted different things from the project plan. So I would have people here saying, we need you to do this. The project plan has to be task driven. I said, okay, so you go and do that. Then you'd show it to the group and the other people would go, no, 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 we need it to be event driven. So you'd have to change it around. So I spent weeks drawing up a project plan, tearing it apart, drawing up a project plan, tearing it apart, drawing up a project plan, which was not entirely what I thought I was going to be doing when I went in there. But the company were quite happy with me to do that because they were getting £1,300 a day for me to do that. So I wasn't getting £1,300 a day, I hasten to add, but it can be interesting. You can get people that have a very fixed idea. And as a consultant, you have to try and change their idea. I was given a project to do again at GSK, where the budget had been agreed, the labour had been agreed, the timeline had been agreed and set. There was a hard stop at the end. Project manager had worked on it, then resigned and left. I was brought in and I was told by the technical director that it's not going to work. It can't be done. You know, it'll be a mess. I said, well, I'll do what I can, but I'm doing this on the understanding that I can't change very much within the project plan. So I looked at the project plan and the project plan was rubbish. According to the way the project plan was structured, there were very few dependencies, and the dependencies there were had not been properly built into the plan. So rather than the project plan fitting within the 12 months that they had, if you did everything according to the plan, it would take another 18 months to finish. So the client had been set an unreal expectation. I now have to deal with that client. So what I did was I went and spoke to the internal client that was having this project delivered. And I said, it can't be done this way. We have to find a different way to do it. What I'm going to propose is radical, will potentially bend some of the rules, but it's the only way I can see of getting it done. So I sat down with the director of the packaging department where this piece of work was being done, and we agreed the approach, and I went off and I did it, and we did it in an agile way. So we set tasks for a week. We did that task, or we tried to do that task, then we looked at the next one. So I broke it down into weeks, and I put multiple tasks in each week. The documentation that was supposed to be provided, I left to one side. Now, there are two types of documentation in a pharma company. There's the regulatory GXP documentation, and there's general documentation. Because this was not a GXP system, so it fell into certain criteria, I put the documentation on the back burner. The internal client agreed with me. However, the rest of the project team in GSK saw it differently. We delivered the project. The client was over the moon. They'd been trying to do this for 15 years. Now they'd done it. However, the documentation was late and took another 2 months to do. I got I got shouted at for that, but the client was happy. So I felt that given the task that I had, I'd achieved a win. Not everybody was happy, but as they say in the kitchen, sometimes you have to break some eggs to make an omelette. So that's just, I could go on forever, but I want to give you time to ask questions. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to open the floor to questions. Put your electronic hands up or wave at Raid, however you want to do it, and I will try and ask questions to the best of my ability. The floor is now yours.
So I think the first question from Mahmoud. So go ahead, Mahmoud.
Gary, I think I have less of a right to ask you because I enjoy talking to you every day.
Well, thank you. But go on.
Okay, I really like the break the egg analogy, and I can't get enough of these analogies you have. My question is, what is the toughest problem you have worked on in solving business problems, and how did you overcome it? Whether it is like a business problem or a problem within the team or a client.
I had to go down to an advertising company in London because they wanted to implement Microsoft Teams and Office 365. And they wanted to do it in a cloud environment, and they wanted to roll it out to all of their satellite companies across Europe. Each of the companies had its own senior executive structure. So each company had an MD, a CIO, an FD. So they had the full the full badges of honor sitting at a desk, and they wanted to find a way to do this. So we won the business, and I put a team together to do it. My boss, who was on the bench at the time, said, "I'll go down and do it." I got a phone call from the client partner within our company saying the client says it's not working. They want to replace the team, or they want to get rid of the team. So I went down and I said, "What's the problem? You know, how can we fix this? Tell me what the problem is, and I'll try and fix it." My boss was barely visible. They were focused very much on doing things in a set way. The thing about doing things from a Microsoft Office 365 and Teams perspective is these are agile tools. These are collaborative tools. The idea is to help people work faster, work smarter. We were working in a very old-fashioned way. So I had to fire my boss from that engagement, take him off and replace him. The client wanted me to replace him. I had to slim the team down, make the team agile, so that we could complete the engagement. We had completed the engagement. There was only 2 of us left at the end, and the team had been 4 to start with. The client was happy with what we'd done. They felt we'd given them a model that they could then take to the European companies. But telling my boss that he probably wasn't the right person to do this piece of work was quite tough. So there have been other ones, but that's a specific example, and I think it's very pertinent to the way the world is now, because the world is moving in a more agile, more dynamic way, and people that don't adopt that agile, that free-flowing, more collaborative way of working, they're just going to fall by the wayside. Does that answer you, sir?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a very brave decisions you made by firing your own boss from the communication, and I don't know how ever we could do that in a challenge like that.
Yeah, it's the way you put it. I had to say to him, look, in engagements, there are sometimes clashes of personality. Not everybody can get on with everybody. Yeah. The way that you work doesn't dovetail very well with the way the client works. So if you don't mind, I would prefer if you stepped back, we bring somebody else in that understands more about the dynamism of an advertising company and the way they work. And he said, "You're firing me."
And he just accepted that.
He accepted it because he was old enough and wise enough to accept that you can't get on with everybody. You're not always a perfect fit. You cannot go into every engagement that you will ever do and be perfect for the role. You will find things that you can't do, and you have to accept that and walk away.
Yeah, very wise. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Be careful, Mahmoud. Be careful. No.
I'm not.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it.
Not anytime soon.
So we have another question from Badr. Go ahead, Badr.
Thank you, Raid. Thank you, Jerry. Long time no see. We miss you a lot, really. I have two questions, and they all depend on your experience, maybe.
Okay.
So, from your experience or from your vision, what's better, to stay in a semi-government company with a low salary, or to risk to go to a smaller company with maybe a higher salary?
That depends on what your personal goals are and what you want to achieve. Some people in this country, if you're in the government, then you get a very good pension benefit when you retire. Yeah. If you go into private industry, then your pension is more yours to manage. Yeah. In a private business, you may get more opportunities. You may develop faster. Your training may be better. However, in a government environment, it's safer. Yeah, because there is a defined career path. You have to do X number of years before you move to this level. Then you have to do Y number of years before you move to this level. Yeah, your competency is measured. Whereas if you work in a private company, yes, there's competencies and it's appraisal driven, but it depends what you want. If you want to risk it, if you think it's a risk, but work out the risks. I tell this to everybody, and people must be getting bored hearing this. Get a piece of paper, write down this on this side, this is the government job, and this is what the government job gives. This is private enterprise and what it would give. Yeah. And then what are my skills and what are my ambitions? And then look at them. Look at what the government role gives compared to your ambitions and your objectives. Does that satisfy these? Or does taking the gamble and going into the private sector, does that meet your objectives? Does it match your skill set? So I know I haven't said yes or no, but hopefully I've given you a way that you can work through a problem like that, because everybody will face them. Everybody will look at a job offer and go, well, I've got this job offer and I've got this job offer. Which one's better? Nobody can see into the future. All you can see is now. Yeah. But if what's there matches what you want now, then it's a good choice. If it doesn't, then maybe there's something better out there. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jerry. Well, the other question is about your experience maybe in insurance companies. Did you face any projects that involved in insurance with companies?
I had to go. In the UK, there are various insurance companies. One of them is called LV, Liverpool Victoria. They had an office in Bournemouth, and this is quite a while ago. they were implementing a new service desk, but I got a spin-off piece of consultancy because they wanted to implement ITIL, the infrastructure library processes. So a change management process, capacity management, incident management, problem management, all of those things. And they didn't know how to do it. So I went and I sat down with the IT director and the CIO and found out what they wanted to implement, how they wanted the relationship between themselves and their suppliers to work. Yeah, because it's not just about process, it's about the relationship. I found working with the insurance companies quite difficult because everything is very proceduralized, because obviously it's a regulated industry. So you have to understand the regulation and how that regulation is going to affect them. But also they were not very proactive. They weren't prepared. Rather than them driving their service providers, the service providers were driving them. So the dynamism within the business wasn't there. The agility wasn't there. They were we have to do this, then we have to do this, then we have to do this, which comes from the way the insurance industry works. Because as I said, it's regulated. So things have to be done in a set procedure. But you don't necessarily have to apply that discipline to the way you do other things within the business. I don't know whether that's any help or not.
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, guys, any question, guys?
Well, I'm so sad I missed most of the stories in this session. I was in and out of this call, but it's recorded, so I'll run back and check what you've spoken about, Jerry.
Okay, you can ask any questions you like, Laura.
We have Mahmoud who's there. Go ahead.
Only if Laura doesn't have a question.
I don't have a question yet.
Okay. While it's cooking, I'm gonna ask something. Okay, Jerry, do you find yourself in positions where you struggle to convince another party about something, like either teammates or client or your boss? And what do you do in such cases? Do you just let go and let them see what is it, or do you fight for your own opinion? What's your take on that?
I'm going to give you another one of those phrases. You have to choose your battles wisely. Yeah. If you have an opinion and you feel strongly enough about that opinion, then it might be worth fighting. If, however, you're working with a senior executive, the senior executive says, this is the way we're going to do it, and this is why, and you think, well, actually, there's a piece missing from that jigsaw. Yeah, it might not be the best time to say, you've missed a bit. Sometimes that can be career limiting because you've stuck your head above the parapet and people are then going to try and shoot you. But if in the course of your engagement, you find a different way of doing it, maybe if you're working with the team below the senior execs, you feed bits to them. You get them to see the advantage of what you're proposing, that there is a different way to do it. And you try and get somebody else to sell it on your behalf because they may have a better relationship with that senior person than you as an external consultant. Because external consultants are not always well perceived within a business. They can be brought in by the senior execs, but I mean, I've told you this before, you can get that middle management permafrost, yeah, who don't want a bunch of faceless consultants telling them how to do their job, even though you've been brought in by the exec team. So it's how you do it, and you have to you have to choose carefully which battles you want to fight. Does that answer you?
Yeah, very wise. Again, thank you.
Anybody else?
Anyone got any questions for Jerry? Now's the time.
I don't think we have any further questions in the chat.
Don't see any hands. Okay, well, thank you, Jerry, so much for sharing your stories with us, for coming on and talking about your experience. I know I missed the bulk of it, but I'll definitely go back and see what we discussed. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Jerry. I don't know if did your dog make an appearance? Did I miss it, or is he just like
No,
camera?
unfortunately, the dog had a prior engagement. I was telling everybody at the beginning that my wife's a diabetic, and about 11 o'clock UK time, she has a snack to try and keep her insulin levels at the right place. And she has half an apple and a couple of strips of cheese. The dog has a thing about cheese. So because there was a plate with cheese and apple going through to my wife's office, he followed the plate. And then when I put the plate down and left, he stayed with the plate. Because he wanted his cheese.
He has his priorities in check. I won't
Exactly.
lie.
Exactly. The
Also-
dog's smart.
Incredibly. I have snacks as well. I'm not diabetic, but I have snacks as well. I'm impressed your wife only has an apple and a couple blocks of cheese, because that's impressive. But okay, well, next time hopefully we'll see the dog. Maybe if you bring some snacks in with you for the chat, we'll have a
But yeah, I
feature.
could bring some apples and cheese, and then I'd get the cheesy dog.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Jerry, so much, and thank you for everyone who joined the meeting today.
Before we end the meeting, Lara, Jerry, can we end the meeting same as you start the meeting?
Hang on a
I
sec.
have it.
Yeah, hang on.
Take your time.
We have to play.
This is new.
There you go. Thank you for listening to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Thanks so much, Jerry.
There you go. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.